A courtroom is a place of judgment. But for some, it becomes something far more profound. A mirror. A moment when the weight of an unthinkable act finally crashes down. These are mothers, women who carried life within them. And then, for reasons that defy comprehension, they became destroyers of the very lives they created. Today, we enter 6 courtrooms, 6 verdicts, 6 sentences, and 6 reactions that reveal what happens when a mother who killed her children hears the words that will define the rest of her existence. Some will remain stone-faced, some will weep, and one will walk free while the world watches in disbelief. This is the moment of reckoning. Rachel Henry, Phoenix, Arizona, January 20th, 2020. A 911 call came from a home near 24th Street and Baseline Road. A woman's voice, trembling, told the dispatcher that 3 children were dead.
Oh my God! Please.
Okay.
Hey, make sure traffic fire knows where they're at.
Oh my God! I can't. Oh my God!
Get her and get her out.
The caller was not the mother. She was the children's great aunt, Pearl Reboledo. And the mother, 22-year-old Rachel Henry, was standing right there. When police arrived, they found Rachel emotional, tearful, insisting she had no idea what happened. Body camera footage captured her telling officers she had put her children down for a nap. 3-year-old Zane, 1-year-old Mariah, and 7-month-old Catalaya.
She kept telling me to clean the house. Everyone wanted me to clean the house. I was cleaning the house. I did the laundry. I was cleaning it. I thought they were sleeping. They fell asleep watching a movie.
She said she simply had not checked on them. She thought they were sleeping. But they were not sleeping. They were dead. And Rachel Henry knew exactly why. The children had been suffocated, one by one, over the course of several hours, and their mother had done it with her own hands. Rachel Henry had moved to Phoenix from Oklahoma just weeks earlier. Her family described a woman spiraling. She had lost her mother, lost her job. Her relationship with the children's father was fractured by accusations of domestic violence. Friends and relatives noticed something was wrong. She seemed detached, paranoid. She told her great aunt that she felt trapped, that no one would listen, that she was losing her mind. On that January afternoon, while Zane and Mariah's father and the great aunt left the house briefly, Rachel began. She placed her hand over 1-year-old Mariah's mouth and nose while the toddler kicked and struggled. 3-year-old Zane watched. He screamed. He hit his mother. He yelled the word no. But Rachel did not stop. When Mariah went still, Rachel wrapped her in a blanket and placed her on the couch as if she were napping. The father and great aunt returned. They spent time with Zane. They had no idea his sister was already dead on the couch behind them. Later, Rachel took Zane into a back bedroom. She told him she was going to change him. Instead, she placed her hand over his face. He fought back. She sang to him. Nursery rhymes. Itsy bitsy spider. Twinkle twinkle little star. She sang until he stopped moving. Finally, she fed 7-month-old Catalaya a bottle until the infant fell asleep. Then she placed her hand over the baby's face and held it there until the child stopped breathing. She wrapped Catalaya in a blanket and placed her beside her siblings on the couch. When the great aunt discovered the children were not breathing, she called 911. A fire captain who responded later told investigators that Rachel's grief seemed performed. Fake, forced. Rachel Henry was arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. For nearly 5 years, her case wound through the legal system. The prosecution initially sought the death penalty. But in December 2024, Rachel changed her plea. She admitted to everything, guilty on all 3 counts. On February 14, 2025, Rachel Henry stood before Judge Jeffrey Fish in a Maricopa County courtroom. No family members gave victim impact statements, but prosecutor Christopher Salmon spoke for them.
It is probably hard to find somebody who had a role in this case who hasn't been affected by it.
He told the court that first responders who arrived at the scene 5 years earlier were still in therapy, still haunted by what they found.
It has had an effect on the police officers and the fire and medical personnel who responded to that scene that day. A lot of the fire personnel thought, because there was a miscommunication, they thought it was a drowning call. They thought they were responding out to a scene to try to save children. And when they got there, found out that there were already 3 dead children inside of the house when they got there. Some of the personnel, the first responders, are still in therapy and have been affected by what happened, even though this was 5 years ago.
He called the murders senseless and cruel. He reminded the judge that these children were completely helpless. Rachel's defense attorney acknowledged that nothing could justify what she had done.
And had any of these factors not occurred, it may have prevented the deaths of these children. There was strong evidence of postpartum depression, mood disorder, dissociation, severe depression, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. Her social history, much of which was provided to the court and is incorporated into the sentencing memo, is also another clear factor. And the complete lack of support that she experienced at the time of the offense is another factor, Judge.
He pointed to postpartum depression, mental illness, a lack of support. He called it an explanation, not an excuse. Rachel Henry did not speak. Judge Fish called the case one of the most horrific he had ever seen.
This is obviously one of the more horrific cases that this court has ever had before it.
He sentenced Rachel Henry to 3 consecutive natural life sentences. She will die in prison. As she was led from the courtroom, Rachel showed little reaction. The woman who had sung lullabies to her children as she killed them was now silent. Letitia Stauch Lorson. Ranch is a quiet subdivision in El Paso County, Colorado, the kind of neighborhood where children ride bikes in the street and neighbors wave from their driveways. In January 2020, it became the center of a nationwide search for an 11-year-old boy named Gannon Stauch. Gannon was a sweet kid. Born 3 months premature at just 1 pound and 6 ounces, he had been a fighter from his first breath. He loved video games and Nerf guns and making people laugh.
And yes, cameraman is right here. Derpa Sour White Gaming. And yes, shout out for our channels. We're going to be doing a lot of these together. Give a shout out to him, his channel, Freedom. It is.
His mother, Landon Hyatt, lived in South Carolina. His father, Al Stauch, had custody and had remarried. Gannon's stepmother was a woman named Letitia. On January 27, 2020, Letitia reported Gannon missing. She told police he had left the house that afternoon to visit a friend and never came back. Search teams mobilized. The community rallied. Letitia gave media interviews, pleading for Gannon's safe return.
We just wanted to add a message to Gannon from my family, is that we love you and miss you, and we hope that you come home soon. And Gannon, I can't wait till you can come home and let everyone know that you're okay. We love you.
But something was wrong. Investigators began looking closer at the stepmother. Her story kept changing. She claimed someone had attacked her and kidnapped Gannon.
I noticed when I had walked in and I saw our we have a little bookshelf. I keep my shades in there too, but we also have our guns and stuff. I saw it was open, but in my mind I thought maybe I left my shades or whatever.
Do you like sunglasses?
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't think anything of it when I heard the noise, and I just started walking downstairs. But I didn't walk downstairs with a gun or anything like that. So I started walking downstairs, and when I walked downstairs, I hear something again.
She claimed intruders had broken into the house. None of it made sense. On March 2, 2020, Letitia Stauch was arrested in South Carolina. 18 days later, authorities made a grim announcement. Gannon's remains had been found in Florida, more than 1,500 miles from his Colorado home. His body had been stuffed into a suitcase and dumped beneath a bridge. The autopsy revealed the horror of Gannon's final hours. He had been stabbed. He had been beaten. He had been shot. The medical examiner found evidence that he had been given hydrocodone before his death. Prosecutors believed the attack began the night before Gannon disappeared, when a fire broke out in his bedroom. They believed Letitia had tried to kill him then, and finished the job the following day. Letitia Stauch was charged with first-degree murder of a child under 12 by a person in a position of trust, tampering with a deceased human body, and tampering with physical evidence. Her trial began in April 2023. For 5 weeks, prosecutors laid out their case. They showed the surveillance footage. They presented text messages between Letitia and her daughter that revealed consciousness of guilt. They called witnesses who testified that Letitia had tried to pay a neighbor to lie to police. Letitia's defense admitted she had killed Gannon, but they claimed she had no idea what she was doing. They argued she suffered from dissociative identity disorder and had experienced a psychotic break. A defense psychologist testified about meeting one of Letitia's alleged alternate personalities, someone named Maria. The jury did not believe it. On May 8, 2023, after approximately 8 hours of deliberation, they returned their verdict. Guilty on all counts. Judge Gregory Werner moved immediately to sentencing. Before he pronounced her fate, Gannon's family spoke.
She came into this world fighting, and unfortunately, you left this world fighting. Your Honor, she fought against someone that he loved and trusted.
His mother, Landon, told the court that Gannon had come into the world fighting and left it fighting. She said Letitia had everyone fooled. She called her incapable of loving anyone but herself.
She had everyone fooled. She projected abuse and addiction claims against all of us, not just me, when all along she was the one harming innocent children, anything to take the light off.
Gannon's father, Al, stood before the court and apologized to Landon. He said he was sorry for allowing Letitia to manipulate them. He asked the judge to strip Letitia of the Stauch name immediately. He said hearing her called Miss Stauch was nauseating and infuriating.
Now, Your Honor, if I have any influence on the final sentence for Tisha, first I ask to be stripped of my last name immediately. It's nauseating and infuriating to hear her called Miss Stauch this past 3 years.
He refused restitution because he did not want to be connected to her for the rest of his life. She was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 12 years for tampering with a body and 18 months for tampering with evidence. She will never leave prison. As the sentence was read, Letitia sat motionless. No tears, no reaction. The same woman who had given bizarre interviews and claimed multiple personalities now had nothing to say. Lori Vallow Daybell. In the world of doomsday believers and apocalyptic prophecy, Lori Vallow found a home. She was attractive, charismatic, and increasingly convinced that she had a divine purpose. By 2019, she had been married 4 times. She had 5 children, and she had fallen under the influence of a man named Chad Daybell. Chad was an author of religious fiction books about the end times. He believed he could detect dark spirits in people. He believed some people were possessed by entities he called zombies, and he believed Lori was his eternal soulmate, destined to rule beside him when the world ended. There was just one problem. Chad had a wife named Tammy, and Lori had 2 children who were very much alive. 16-year-old Tylee Ryan was Lori's daughter from a previous marriage. 7-year-old Joshua Vallow, known as JJ, was adopted. Both children had become inconvenient to Lori's new life with Chad. According to prosecutors, Lori had begun referring to them as zombies. She told her friend, Melanie Gibb, that her children had been possessed by dark spirits. In September 2019, both children vanished. Lori told people different stories. She said Tylee was at college. She said JJ was with relatives. She said they were safe. None of it was true. While investigators searched for the missing children, Lori married Chad Daybell in Hawaii. They honeymooned on the beach. They posted photos. They smiled. Meanwhile, Lori's 4th husband, Charles Vallow, had been shot dead by Lori's brother Alex Cox in July 2019. Alex claimed self-defense. No charges were filed. 4 months later, Chad's wife Tammy died unexpectedly at their Idaho home. Her death was initially ruled natural. Chad married Lori just 2 weeks later. In June 2020, investigators executed a search warrant on Chad Daybell's property in Rexburg, Idaho. In the backyard, buried in shallow graves, they found the remains of Tylee Ryan and J.J. Vallow. Tylee's body had been burned and dismembered. J.J. was wrapped in plastic and duct tape. Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell were arrested and charged with murder.
Chad Daybell, who resides at that residence, has also been taken into custody for questioning.
Lori's trial took place in April and May 2023. Prosecutors presented text messages showing Lori and Chad discussing which family members had become zombies. They presented evidence that Alex Cox's phone had been near the Daybell property on the nights key deaths occurred. They showed that Lori had continued collecting Social Security benefits for her dead children. The defense argued that Lori was under Chad's psychological control. Her attorney painted her as a woman who had been manipulated by a man she believed was a prophet.
However, as I said, the substantial amount of harm to the victims and the victim's family, emotional, financial, and otherwise, are immeasurable and justifies consecutive sentences.
On May 12, 2023, the jury found Lori Vallow Daybell guilty of first-degree murder of Tylee and JJ, conspiracy to commit murder, and grand theft. As the verdicts were read, Lori stood with a stoic expression. She did not cry. She did not react. She stared straight ahead as the word guilty was repeated again and again. On July 31, 2023, Judge Stephen Boyce sentenced Lori to multiple consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. Before sentencing, victims spoke. Tammy Daybell's sister, Samantha Gwilliam, said her family had been ripped apart. She compared her sister, a librarian and educator, to the woman who had conspired to kill her. She told Lori she was 1,000 times the woman Lori would ever dream of being.
So on count 2, the charge you were convicted of, the first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan, you are sentenced to the custody of the State Board of Corrections to serve the maximum allowed sentence of fixed determinate term of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. On count 4, the charge of the first-degree murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow, you are sentenced to the custody of the State Board of Corrections to serve the maximum allowed sentence, a fixed determinate life imprisonment sentence with no possibility of parole. One of the offenses you combined to commit was first-degree murder, so those may be punishable also by imprisonment for life.
Judge Boyce addressed Lori directly. He told her she had chosen the most evil and destructive path possible despite having countless better options. He noted the painful irony that while her children lay in shallow graves in Idaho, she was enjoying a honeymoon in Hawaii. Lori Vallow Daybell showed no reaction. She was led from the courtroom in silence. In 2024, Chad Daybell was also found guilty and sentenced to death. In 2025, Lori was convicted in Arizona of conspiring to kill her fourth husband, Charles Vallow, and received 2 additional life sentences. The woman who believed she was chosen by God will spend the rest of her life in a prison cell. Susan Smith Union, South Carolina, is a small town where everyone knows everyone. In October 1994, it became the center of a national tragedy that would expose the depths of human deception. On the night of October 25th, 23-year-old Susan Smith appeared at a stranger's door, hysterical and crying. She told them she had been carjacked. A black man with a gun had forced his way into her car at a stoplight and ordered her to drive. A few miles later, he pushed her out and drove away. Her 2 sons were still inside, 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alex, strapped in their car seats in the back.
I do understand why they're having to do what they're doing. I'm all they have. Right now, they have not been able to rule anyone out. I don't think I'm any more of a suspect than anyone in this case right now.
The story ignited a massive search.
And your mom and dad are going to be right here waiting on you when you get home. I love you so much.
Susan and her estranged husband David appeared on national television, tearfully begging for the safe return of their boys. Susan looked directly into the camera and pleaded with the kidnapper to take care of her babies. For 9 days, the nation watched and waited. Law enforcement searched. Volunteers mobilized. A composite sketch of the alleged carjacker was released. Black men across the region were stopped and questioned. But investigators were growing suspicious. Susan's story had holes. The stoplight where she claimed the carjacking occurred was equipped with pressure sensors. The sensors showed no second vehicle had been present that night. Her timeline did not add up. Her behavior seemed inconsistent with a grieving mother. On November 3, 1994, 9 days after her children disappeared, Susan Smith confessed. There had been no carjacking, no kidnapper. Susan had driven to the shore of John D. Long Lake, a quiet spot she knew well. She released the emergency brake and let her car roll down the boat ramp into the dark water. Michael and Alex were still strapped in their car seats. She stood on the shore and watched the car sink. Divers found the vehicle submerged just off the ramp. Inside were the bodies of 2 little boys. Susan Smith was charged with 2 counts of murder. Her trial began in July 1995 and captivated the nation. Prosecutor Tommy Pope argued that Susan had murdered her children because they were obstacles to a relationship with a wealthy man named Tom Findlay. Findlay had recently ended things with Susan, telling her he did not want the responsibility of raising someone else's children. Days later, Michael and Alex were dead. The defense painted a different picture. Susan's father had killed himself when she was 6. Her stepfather had sexually abused her for years. She suffered from depression and had attempted suicide multiple times. Her attorneys argued that Susan had intended to die alongside her children, but had left the car at the last moment. The jury convicted Susan Smith of murder in just 2.5 hours. The penalty phase would determine whether she lived or died. Prosecutor Pope argued passionately for death, but the defense presented a portrait of a broken woman shaped by trauma and mental illness. They did not ask for sympathy. They asked for understanding. On July 28, 1995, the jury returned with their verdict: life in prison, not death. When the sentence was announced, Susan dropped her head and wept. She was led from the courtroom in tears. Susan Smith is currently incarcerated at Leith Correctional Institution in South Carolina. In November 2024, she appeared before a parole board for the first time. She testified via video link, sobbing as she said she was very sorry and that she would give anything to go back and change what she did.
First of all, I want to say how very sorry I am.
Her ex-husband David Smith also testified. He told the board that Susan had changed his life forever that night. He said he had never seen her express genuine remorse toward him.
I never have felt any remorse from her for it. She's never expressed any to me. I never seen it on paper. No, you've heard, she changed my life for the rest of my life that night.
He asked that she remain in prison.
I understand back in 95 that through the state's law, life in prison meant 30 years to life. And now that's different, but at that time, that's what counts. I understand that. But ultimately, to me, that's only 15 years per child. Her own children. It's just not enough.
The parole board unanimously denied Susan Smith's request for release. She will be eligible to apply again in 2 years. Casey Anthony. In the summer of 2008, a grandmother in Orlando, Florida, noticed something was wrong. Cindy Anthony had not seen her 2-year-old granddaughter Kaylee in a month. Every time she asked her daughter Casey about the child's whereabouts, she received vague answers and excuses.
Did you continue to insist that you wanted to know where your granddaughter was right then and there?
Yes, I mean, I wanted her to take me because she kept insisting that Kaylee was spending the night with Zanny. And I said, well, she doesn't need to do that anymore, so we need to get her. And Casey kept insisting that it was Kaylee would probably already be asleep by that time, and she didn't want to disturb her, that we could go the next day. And I didn't care if we were up all night, if it disrupted Kaylee's sleep, that I would stay up all night and not go to work the next day if it became an issue that Kaylee wasn't able to sleep and someone wasn't going to get any sleep. I volunteered to be the one. I didn't care. I wanted to see Kaylee.
Kaylee was with the nanny. Kaylee was at the beach. Kaylee was fine. On July 15, 2008, Cindy Anthony called 911. She reported her granddaughter missing.
No, she continued to insist that it was not a good idea to get her that night, and I was getting more irritated and was not happy with that answer, that I threatened again to call the police, and I gave them a few more minutes to try to reason with the sister. And I just had enough of not hearing anything, so then I made another phone call to 911.
And she said something else. She said her daughter's car had smelled like death. Casey Anthony's story quickly unraveled. She told police that Kaylee had been kidnapped by her nanny, a woman named Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez. She said she had been conducting her own investigation and had not reported her daughter missing because she was scared. She led investigators on a tour of Universal Studios, claiming she worked there. She did not. Everything Casey Anthony said was a lie. For months, investigators searched for Kaylee while Casey sat in jail on charges of child neglect and providing false information. In December 2008, skeletal remains were found in a wooded area near the Anthony family home. The body was identified as Kaylee Anthony. Duct tape was found near the skull. Casey Anthony was charged with first-degree murder. Her trial began in May 2011 and became a national sensation. Millions watched as prosecutors argued that Casey had killed her daughter to free herself from the burden of motherhood so she could party and pursue relationships. They pointed to evidence that someone had searched for chloroform on the family computer. They highlighted Casey's behavior during the 31 days her daughter was missing, including photos of her participating in a hot body contest at a nightclub. The defense offered a shocking counter-narrative. Attorney Jose Baez claimed that Kaylee had drowned accidentally in the family swimming pool and that Casey's father George had helped dispose of the body. He argued that Casey's lies were the result of a lifetime of abuse and dysfunction, not evidence of murder. No cause of death was ever established. The prosecution could not prove how Kaylee died or who was present when it happened.
They didn't come right out the gate and show you the evidence. They gave you 2 weeks of testimony that was completely irrelevant and served only one purpose, and that was to paint Casey Anthony as a slut, as a party girl, as a girl who lies, and has absolutely nothing to do with how Kaylee died.
On July 5, 2011, after less than 11 hours of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict.
Will the defendant rise along with counsel? Madam Clerk, you may publish the verdicts.
So say we all, dated at Orlando, Orange County, Florida, on this 5th day of July, 2011, signed Person. As to the charge of aggravated child abuse, verdict is to count 2. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. As to the charge of aggravated manslaughter of a child, verdict is to count 3. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty.
Not guilty of first-degree murder, not guilty of aggravated child abuse, not guilty of aggravated manslaughter, guilty only of 4 misdemeanor counts of providing false information to law enforcement.
As to the charge of providing false information to law enforcement officer, verdict is to count 5. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of providing false information to a law enforcement officer as charged in the indictment.
Outside the courthouse, the reaction was volcanic. Crowds screamed in disbelief. People across the country took to social media to express outrage.
And the court having previously adjudged you to be guilty of the crimes contained in counts 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Casey Anthony was sentenced to 4 years for the misdemeanor convictions, but was credited with time served. She was released from jail on July 17th 2011, just 12 days after her acquittal. The woman who had not reported her daughter missing for 31 days walked free. The woman whose car smelled of decomposition walked free. The woman who had lied about everything walked free. Casey Anthony disappeared from public life. She later gave interviews claiming she still does not know what happened to her daughter. The Florida Department of Children and Families concluded their investigation by finding that Casey was responsible for Kaylee's death, but that finding carries no legal weight. Kaylee Anthony would have turned 19 years old in 2027. Instead, her remains were found in a trash bag near her grandmother's house. No one has ever been held accountable for her death. Leilani Simon. On the morning of October 5, 2022, a frantic 911 call came from a home in Chatham County, Georgia. A young mother named Leilani Simon reported that her 20-month-old son, Quentin, was missing. She told the dispatcher that she woke up to find the front door open and her baby gone from his playpen. She suggested someone must have taken him. Police and volunteers searched the neighborhood for days. Quentin's face was everywhere. The community rallied together, desperate to find the toddler they would come to call Chatham County's child. But investigators noticed something troubling. Leilani Simon wasn't acting like a mother whose child had been abducted. She wasn't searching. She wasn't pleading with the public, and her story kept changing.
Me and my youngest daughter was on the way to McDonald's. Danny calls and asked me, did I get Quentin or have I seen him? And I said, no, why? And he said that Leilani said he was missing.
6 days after Quentin was reported missing, police made a stunning announcement. They believed the little boy was dead, and they named his own mother as the sole suspect. What investigators discovered was damning. GPS data from Leilani's phone placed her at a remote dumpster at the Azalea Mobile Home Plaza at 1 o'clock in the morning. When confronted, she claimed she was throwing away spoiled shrimp pasta. Police didn't believe her.
We believe that he was placed in a specific dumpster at a specific location, and it was brought here by regular means.
For the next 30 days, FBI agents and officers sifted through 1.2 million pounds of trash at the Chatham County landfill. On November 18th, an officer raking through garbage made a heartbreaking discovery. A small white object that fit in the palm of her hand. It was a piece of Quentin's skull. 2 days later, Leilani Simon was arrested and charged with murder. The trial revealed a mother who resented her own child. A neighbor testified that Leilani told her she wished she had aborted Quentin. The babysitter described her as a bad mother who mistreated the toddler.
Did you ever see her treat him in a way that upset you?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us about any of those times?
With the console, like the PlayStation remote control, when she said that Quentin had got a hold of it, and it was the night before, and I guess she still got mad talking about it, so she pushed him down.
Several times we got Quentin, and he would be in a long onesie, and he would have poop from all over.
Prosecutors painted a picture of a woman whose priority was her boyfriend and her drugs, not her children.
And of course, she's still concealing that material fact that she had discarded her son Quentin Simon in a dumpster, like a piece of trash.
The jury saw a disturbing video Leilani had recorded of herself, contemplating driving her car into a river. They heard her, shifting stories, her lies to investigators, her complete lack of urgency while her son was supposedly missing. And they learned that on the night police announced they were searching the landfill for Quentin's body, Leilani was at a bar with friends, slamming shots of Patron. On October 25, 2024, after just 7 hours of deliberation, the jury returned their verdict.
We, the jury, find as follows: malice murder,
Count 16, making a false statement, we find the defendant guilty. Count 17, making a false statement, we find the defendant guilty. Count 18, making a false statement, we find the defendant guilty.
Guilty on all 19 counts. Leilani Simon stood motionless as the judge read each charge. But as the jurors confirmed their votes one by one, tears began streaming down her face. By the end, she was sobbing. 1 month later, Judge Tammy Stokes sentenced Simon to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 40 years.
Count 1, malice murder, felony, life with the possibility of parole.
She will be 65 years old before she can even ask to be released. Little Quentin Simon was 20 months old. He never got to see his second birthday. His mother threw him away like garbage, and now she will spend the rest of her life paying for it. 6 mothers, 6 courtrooms, 6 moments that exposed the unthinkable. The courtroom can deliver verdicts. The law can impose sentences. But nothing can undo what these mothers have done, and nothing can bring their children back.